Hey folks, this is Lucid, and I'm going to be doing a national overview for Asphodel for an upcoming game. And this is going to be an interesting one. Part of the reason it's going to be interesting is because I, like many others, have called Asphodel a dumpster heap of a nation before. Irredeemable, unplayable, the worst nation in the game. I think we've all said it. I actually, people have been asking me for months, even kind of years, to play Asphodel. But for whatever reason, this month, a lot of people have been asking me, and I had been politely declining, saying I don't want to wish that kind of pain upon myself. But then I saw GC did a video on it, and then Perun did a list of worst nations, and it was listed in there as the worst. And I got thinking about it. Part of it's because I'm in a game playing late age relay, so I'm working my way through all the pop kill nations. And some of the things I figured out with relay, or like how I thought about the nation, I think transitioned to Asphodel. And so anyway, it got me thinking: is there a way to take this janky, broken down old car of a nation, put a big old engine in it, and figure out a way to get it to go like 100 miles down the freeway? And that's what we're going to try to do. So basically, it's like Pangea. We have different mages. Instead of getting like nature and blood, you get nature and death. And then you generally have like a bit less cross paths and you don't have seducers. You get a very similar troop lineup to like EA Pan. Your forts are hot garbage. They're very expensive. And they give no recruitment points for commanders. So that's pretty bad. Extremely bad, you might say. Irredeemable, others would even say. So anyway, if that's the case, what do we have going for us? Well, we have a few things going for us. One is we can get these mannequin free spawns, right? And they're going to come into your. Let's talk about that real quick. So we're a pop kill nation. We get these undead chaff as free spawn from our dominion. The ways to get more of them are to be in a forest province. Forest provinces give more better. You can have higher dominion strength. The more dominion strength you have in a province, the more free spawn you will get in it. You can take having a temple will increase rates, and growth scales will also increase the rates. And the quality, which matters a lot, because your undead elephants are the shit. The quality of your free spawn is based on your magic scales. We'll go and review all the different kinds of free spawn we get, but in my opinion, my humble opinion, they're trash. Except for the big ones. The big ones are nice, but most of the free spawn you get's utter garbage. Like worse than Long Dead, in my opinion. People say it's good against thugs, and in some ways it's okay against thugs, but it's not really that great, especially if they have fire shield. We'll talk about that later. But so the other thing is our pop kill, right? Because we're talking about pop kill and free spawn. The pop kill portion of this equation is based on, as is all pop kill nations, by the way, the strength of your dominion score. And Asphodel is a slow pop kill nation. So whereas like Airmore or Lemuria, you're going to get, I think for Lemuria it's like 3, maybe it's more, 3% per candle per turn. Airmore's like 5% per candle per turn. So if you're like 10 dominion strength in Airmore, you're going to lose like 50% of your population in one turn. Obviously, it doesn't take very long to whittle your population down to nothing. For Asphodel, however, it's about 1%. So if you're at 10 Dominion strength, which would be really high, you'll get a lot of free spawn, but your population's also going to die off pretty fast. Like within, it's going to be 10% a turn. So, it's going to cut in half mighty quick. By the end of the first year, you'll just have just a pittance of what you started with in your capital. But if you don't have much Dominion, if you only have one candle, for instance, it's only 1%, which means you can mostly compensate with growth. So, that's something that I think most people don't realize. And it's also something that kind of got affected by the Dominion spread mechanics changes from Dominions 4 to 5. It used to be that if you had very low Dominion score, your temples basically wouldn't work. I think. I might be misremembering it, but I think it was like you had basically no chance for a temple check. But now, basically, you're going to get a 50% chance to get a temple check even if you're very, very low Dominion. Right? So it starts scaling from a higher point. So anyway, ultra low Dominions builds are actually kind of possible in Dominions 5. But you need to use preachers, which we actually have okay preachers with this nation. Okay, so we've talked about the pop kill portion, which is it's going to kill our population, but potentially at a very slow rate. But there's a trade-off, right? Because if we have very low Dominion score, then we're not going to get very much free spawn. The funny part of this trade-off is you have Black Centaur, who are like White Centaur, which are excellent sacreds, and you're a pop kill nation. So generally with a pop kill nation, you're going to sack all of your scales, because why have them if you have no population, right? Except for maybe growth and magic, and maybe luck. So anyway, you burn your scales to the ground, and then you can invest in a decent bless. And then you use your White Centaur to run over people. Well, the challenge with that, right, is that if you're doing that, you're going to need a fair amount of Dominion to get a fair number of Black Centaur. Because the number of sacreds you can recruit every month is limited by your Dominion score. Excuse me. So, you're going to want to take a lot. The problem is, if you have high Dominion, you're going to burn your capital to the ground in reasonably short order. Now, you can go like Dominion 5. And Dominion 5... I mean, you're going to be losing 5% a turn. You'll be able to crap out a lot of Black Warriors, Black Centaurs, by the time your first war rolls around, right? So you can probably steamroll somebody with Black Centaur for your first war. But you'll take attrition and, this, that, and the other. And by the time your next war rolls around, your capital is not going to be making Black Centaur anymore. You're going to be not making much. So that's kind of like a paradox with this nation, which is the more Dominion, to take sacreds, you need to get Dominion, but if you get Dominion, you can't build your sacreds, right? So we're seeing some kind of weirdness. But the other trade-off is more straightforward. Like, if it wasn't for that, it would be like, okay, get low Dominion and growth if you want to have troops, and then get high Dominion and trash your scales and get a cool god or something if you want to have... and then that would also open up making some Black Centaur too. But if you want to rely mostly on the free spawn. So on one hand, it has the potential to be cool. On the other hand, it seems like it tries to be two things and isn't really one. Now, that's when we get into how do we actually make this engine run? How do we make this thing work? And I'm going to tell you the direction we're going to go in with this nation, the way I see tuning the engine to make it work. And that is going to be going for a Dominion Strength 1 build with growth and with not horrible scales. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to take an Awake Researcher. And that is not something that is in meta exactly. It's going to be kind of forced on us because the difference between 1 and 2 Dominion Strength is actually a big deal for your capital. It's going to be, over the course of a game, it's basically going to be the difference between, if we take growth 3 and we go 1 Dominion, our capital is going to effectively be neutral growth. It'll slowly lose population, but it's effectively neutral growth. If we go Dominion Strength 2, which is what would be required to get a monster, it would be the effect, or it would be just like getting Death 3 for a normal nation. And our population, it would be a little worse, actually. And our population will be on a rather quick downhill slide. I want to say it's still an option. You can still have okay income, and if you're aggressive enough, you can make it work. But there's major problems with it. Getting that extra point of dominion, you're definitely going to feel. But you can make Black Centaur and stuff. So there are options, I think, to go higher, but that's not how we're going to play them. We're not going to play them where we're going to burn everything to the ground, which is not normally how we do pop kill. I think one of the things, too, it's one of the things that makes Scalaria so strong, is that the free spawn is the good part of pop kill, and the pop kill part is a bad part of pop kill. Like, we don't... pop kill nations are fun, but they're fun for the other mechanics. The pop kill part isn't really... It's not really that helpful, right? So anyway, we're going to be playing the no pop kill Asphodel with 1 Dominion strength with growth. We're going to take an Awake Researcher, most likely. And normally I'm kind of mixing up Pretender Design and National Overview, because I could go through and just tell you all the units, and we're going to do that, don't worry. But I want to put this in context of how to play it, how to make it a machine, an engine that runs. And that's totally, for this nation, it's totally dependent on, like, the units are in some ways secondary, right? The thing that matters more is how you manage this crazy mechanic between Dominion, population, sacreds, normal units, and your god. Okay. So, we've talked about Awake Researcher. Now, I want to mention a little bit more why I want to take an Awake Researcher, and this is going to start segueing us into the units. And the reason I want to take it is because we are going to rush somebody. We are going to rush the shit out of somebody. We're going to run at them. We're going to elf them with centaurs, because they're stealthy, and they're pretty good. And we're going to elf them with satyrs, which are not very good, but hey, it's all we got. So... yeah, they're going to be our siege chaff, kind of. They're not horrible. Well, I think actually I'd probably get these guys. They're a little cheaper, and they have the same siege strength. Now, they don't have the javelin, but it's probably fine. They cause unrest. I don't know. We'll talk about it later. But we're basically going to bum rush the shit out of somebody, right? And I'm going to time it with a few things. Because we have an Awake Researcher, it doesn't mean we're going to have the best research in the game. But what it does mean is we are probably going to hit our first research targets well before everybody else. Which means we can have a very early Foul Vapors. And I can have enough Mannequins, because remember, we're not really doing a Sacred strategy, because we don't have... If we go Dominion Strength 1, I'm not going to have a lot of these guys. So... if I had Sacreds, I could give them poison resistance. We could do Foul Vapors with them. But we're not doing Sacreds, right? We will have Poison Ward we can potentially do on some of the Centaur Warriors and stuff. But what I'm imagining is maybe like a squad of Centaur Warriors on Guard Commander, with a few more on attack, with a few of these Panic Apostates. Some of them will be, at least one of them, hopefully by that time, will be a water random. We can also get Dryads if we need to score a water random. They're much more likely to be one. And then these are also much faster to recruit. So basically, there's a 1 in 4 chance of this guy being a water random. And there's a 1 in 3 chance of her. But you get twice as many of them per turn. No, it's a bit more gold investment. Anyway. But yeah, and then we're going to drop Foul Vapors on somebody. We're going to bait them into attacking us. We're going to kill their whole army with Foul Vapors. We have to carefully pick our target to find somebody that a Foul Vapors rush will work against. And then we'll take their capital. And then we'll be 2 capitals. And people are going to think, hey, Asphodel's the worst nation in the game. All these people have been making videos about how they suck. And we'll be like, yeah, well, if we're going to make it work, we have to be aggressive. Little do they know that we are going to attempt to snowball out of control. Now, of course, this can all go horribly, horribly, horribly wrong, as can anything in Dominions. But that is the plan. We'll talk more in the game about the actual timings. I think it's around turn 15 when I can have Foul Vapors, which isn't super duper early. but it depends on how many researchers I get out. That's like with my god, I think I can get it then. We also have other options. I don't have to Foul Vapor's Rush. We can. These guys also make excellent thugs. So we were kind of segueing into talking about these Panic Apostates. Let's talk about them properly now. They're 4 commander points, which is, it's a problem, right? It means in your capital they're slow to recruit. If you do a Bramble Fort, which are the kind of forts you summon with 35 nature gems, I'll show you. It's this one. You have to be standing in the lab, in the forest you want to grow the fortress on. But you get this, which gives you 1 commander point bonus. So you get 2 commander points per turn, right? Which means you can get one of these guys in a turn. But for this guy, it would still take 2 turns. So you can see he's grayed out. Anyway, you can get these, and they're kind of shitty, right? They only have 150 wall strength. They're basically not good. But your only alternative is to build a fort. And if you build a fort, you probably would rather die. Do I have any units? Okay, here's one. To build a fort, it costs 900 gold. 900. I've been thinking about it, and one of the things to get a little, philosophical here in terms of game design. I like that Illwinter does not bend over backwards to balance things based on the latest feedback from folks. And one of the reasons I like it, I do like, by the way, that they buffed Macone, because Macone really needed some help. But now it's a good nation. But I like that they don't generally do it a ton. And part of the reason for that is, like, the game meta is not terribly well understood. There's just not enough players. Like, we don't have enough players playing it enough games, and games are slow, that people really understand the whole meta, which is it's awesome if you're a player, because that means you can invent new things and people wouldn't have seen it, and you can surprise people, and you can understand all these things that, people haven't maybe thought of. So anyway, it is cool that despite Asphodel being notoriously bad for a long period of time, Illwinter has not gone and buffed them. That being said, we'll see how well I do in this game, but I probably will get horribly crushed. But if they do want to make one change, what I would suggest is, if you're going to give them this super expensive garbage fort, at least let it give them 1 commander point, or at least 1 commander point in a forest or something. I mean, for God's sakes, 900 gold for something that doesn't give a commander point bonus is horrible. It's so bad. While we're on the subject of forts, I know we're being a little schizophrenic with kind of how we're structuring this, but while we're on the subject of forts, you can, if you build a fort here, and we can do it. Do I have all the corners with? Yeah. If we build a fort there, we will get the ability to recruit all of our cool units. I think we have it this turn. All right, so we have a fort. We can get our cool units, right? So we are not limited to getting our cool stuff in labs. The problem is, if we want to get this guy now, we have 1 commander point, right? So we build our lab, we have 1 commander point. A fort, which if you think about it, to get this guy, it's going to still be a 500 gold investment on top of this for the lab. So it's a 1,400 gold investment to get one of these guys every 4 turns, which is pretty horrible. If I want to put even more money in, I can get a Dryad, if I build the temple, every 2 turns. It's pretty bad, is what I'm trying to say. So this makes the forests, the cool part about it, though, is that it makes forests really important for you. Because in forests, you can summon Bramble Forts, and Bramble Forts have 2 commander points. And commander points are something that's pretty hard for Asphodel to get. They're like an independent resource. Normally, it's pretty trivial on a nation. If you have money, you can just kind of spend it and get enough commander point recruitment, You know, like it's not this hard. And Asphodel, it's hard, and you kind of need it. The other thing that's worth noting while we're just talking about infrastructure, and then we're going to go back, I promise, to the Panic Apostate, is the labs and temples you get are actually very cheap in a forest. In a forest, it's... Let's look at in the national overview. Yeah, 200... So it's half price, right? So 200 gold temples and 250 gold labs. So getting fully set up in a forest is a pretty good deal. Pretty good deal. The problem with it, though, is it costs you nature gems. And nature gems are like crack cocaine for your nation. Very, very addictive stuff. But I get distracted. Let's go back and talk about our units. So the Panic Apostate, recruit anywhere, as we just demonstrated, from any fort, but for commander points, which means you can get them every other turn in a forest fort or every 4 turns in a non-forest fort. And by forest fort, I mean your Bramble Fort, because if you manually build a fort in a forest, it's going to suck. So anyway, that's that. Now, let's take a look at what they can do. They're 300 gold. They have Animal Awe. Poison Resistance 5. They're Stealthy, which is a very good tag. They have Recuperation, which is an excellent thug tag. And then they have Supply Bonus and Beastmaster. So their paths that everyone comes with is Death 2, Nature 3. They have a random for getting Water, Earth, Death, or Nature. And then they have a 10% of getting an additional one. We'll just ignore the 10% for now. So you have a chance of being Nature 4. Nature 4 means you can drop very big nature spells in combat. Like you can, I think, let me forget. I always forget what charm is. I think it's 3. Yeah. So potentially you can do, like, really drop lots of low fatigue charm spam with the Nature 4s. But even the Nature 3s, you put it, they don't even need a Thistle Mace, but it's going to cut the fatigue in half and give you a pin bonus. But yeah, dropping charm. You can also do all of the big kind of nature spells like, well, mass regen's not going to work on your undead and stuff, but mass protection, Serpent's Blessing, all of those things. Yeah, they're pretty sick. The death, well, okay, we're at the wrong thing. The death randoms, they're going to be Death 3. Importantly, they can do Invulnerability and Soul Vortex. And so that makes them pretty good at thugging. But all of your guys can do Invulnerability and Soul Vortex if you give them an extra Death Gem or 2. Then it doesn't matter that they're Death 2. They can hop up a level and cast it. But your Death 3s also, with a Skull Staff, can reach Death 4. And Death 4 is the threshold for dropping all of the big death battlefield spells. Not all of them, but most of them. Darkness, Rigor Mortis. You need to be Death 4 for those. And so that's pretty cheap for us. Like, if we want to talk about how much of an investment is it, well, Death 4 is not expensive. It's going to cost us 10 Death Gems. Right, so that's very, very cheap. And, of course, the random for this guy. So, in some ways, I think, while the Death 3s are good thugs, right, the Nature 4s are probably your casters. The Earth and the Water, normally you're not very excited about getting a cross path compared with, increasing the level of an existing path. But man, I think the Nature and the Water might be the best. So Water is really nice because it gives you access to just a bunch of thug buffs. Quicken Self, Liquid Body. If you go underwater, there's a bunch of water buffs that work underwater. Ice Shield, Water Shield. We also have access to Moss Body and Stygian Flesh too, right? So, or Stygian Skin. So anyway, Water gives you a bunch of good buffs. And Earth obviously gives you phenomenal buffs. It gives you Iron Skin. If you put an Earth Gem on them or give them Earth Boots, you can do Summon Earth Power. And that's obviously really good. And because then you can drop Iron Warriors or Iron Skin or Temper Flesh. And they're not cheap, but I think I can show you. Well, we won't show you here, but we'll show you in game. These guys can get nuts. And I know you're looking at them and you're like, how, are they really nuts? And yeah, they get super nuts. Like if we look at their stats, nothing super phenomenal here. 27 HP doesn't look like, a heavy thug worth 300 gold. But we can twice-born them. And if we twice-born them and they die, first of all, we don't care if they come back with afflictions because they've come back as a Carrion Lord who has recuperation built into the chassis. And the Carrion Lord, which is one of the summons we get, but also a twice-born form, the Carrion Lord is much higher base HP, basically double. The stat line is a little bit worse, but who cares? The MR is phenomenal, 19. So it gets +1 MR. It also gets the Sacred Tag, which is pretty nice if you took a Bless. And in addition, it also gets no upkeep, right? So we get rid of our upkeep issues. It maintains or retains Stealthy. The problems with it, though, is that it has Magic Being tag and Undead tag. These are both bad tags. This means you can get crushed by Moonblade. This means you can get crushed by Holy Scourge. These are very bad tags. The Undead, not so bad because it's going to give you no encumbrance. But anyway, they're issues. Let's just say they're vulnerabilities. How about that? And those are things that, I don't know. We don't have magic phase attacks, but we do have stealthy, so we can surprise the shit out of people with these guys. And when these guys jump out of your ice bowl, they're gonna scare you like crazy. Okay, do I have construction researched? I might actually show you what these guys can manage. Is Machaca's got a decent size force here. Let's make some items real quick. We're going to do, one of the things we're going to talk about a lot in this game, or play with a lot, is enlarge. Because a lot of times you look at, you're like, death, nature, what is it really going to offer? Well, it can offer quite a lot. We've got this guy. I want to take a water random. We're going to twice-born you. Ilos. And she is going to be a fluffer. Let's get a better set of fluffers here. And I need to make a couple items real quick. Okay, shit. Let's have them chill out for a second. Okay. The basic kit, and the amulets of the giants are available at Construction 4, but we don't really need those. We're gonna kind of style on these guys. A lot of these things we're gonna make are available much sooner, like Construction 2. So one of the things when we're talking about doing a research rush that we can hit is very early thug gear. And we can have some crazy, crazy stuff very, very early. Potentially for our first war at like turn, 12 or 15. The other thing I want to make... Do I have another Earth random? Well, you're not Earth. Okay, we're going to make these lion pelts, which are also available Construction 2. We'll have you make another bracer. Also available. The problem with making the Earth gear is having Earth gems, which is not something we're guaranteed to have. Okay. They're conquering me. This guy's on a fort, which is nice, because I can come in here and kill him. So this will be our little... Oh, wait, shit, I gotta kill this guy. Ilos, where are you? Okay. So we should get Ilos back as a Carrion Lord. Excellent. Now, while we're on the subject of Carrion Lords, because you can see we're not doing this in the normal, logical order. While we're on the subject of Carrion Lords, if you summon them by the spell, they are right here. And basically any of your Panic Apostates can do it. But they're 35 nature gems, which is a lot. Whereas twice borning one of these guys, you have to pay the 300 gold to get the base form, but twice borning them, it's only going to be 15 death gems. So in some ways, it's more economical to twice born them. And if you get them from the spell, they don't get a random, but they do get Holy 3. So you can see Death 2, Nature 3, no random, and then Holy 3. The Holy 3 is nice because we have a bunch of national spells. Yeah. So, okay. We have our 2 Carrion Lords, and we are about to make them with very budget gear completely fucking nuts. Okay? And so here is going to be our little dandy script. If I can find it. Didn't I have a water random? I could have sworn I did. Oh, actually, no, we need a nature too. I mean, we need a holy too. Well, I might talk about heroes in a bit, so I don't want to use her. Okay, we're not going to min-max this too much. We'll take you. Let's bring you over here, and let's set up the script. So we're going to show you what these guys can do. First of all, they're now size 4. They're base size 3. But because they have the Amulet of Giants on them, they are now size 4. So I'm going to put... She's size 2, so she can fit in the same square as one of them. What she's going to do is we have a national spell called Regrowth, which is going to give us regeneration. And we're going to basically cast that a couple times. And then we're going to cast Enlarge a couple times. And this guy who's coming over, please tell me I did a little bit of earth magic. I can't remember. Oh, shit. That's actually a problem. This fort's popped. Damn it. All right, well, we're going to try it with super budget without having all that. We may be okay. We may not. Do Moss Body twice. And then Quicken Self. And I think, actually, we're going to do Blessing. And then we'll do Protection. So you're doing Moss Bodies. You're going to do, I guess, Iron Skin. I know you'll do Legions of Steel. Oh, wait, it's 2. Fuck. We really do need Earth Power for some of this. To get super crazy, you need Conjuration 3, Alt 4. Right now we're... oh, wait, we can do... No, we can do it. Summon Earth Power. Legions of Steel. Iron Skin. And then Attack Closest. And you have done Moss Body, Moss Body. We can't do Regeneration. One thing we need to do that we're not doing is Enlarge. I think we'll have you just do 1 and then Enlarge. Should be fine. And she can get the fuck out. Seems okay. We could probably min-max this a little bit better. And we'll do Blessing and then Regrowth, actually. Okay, and this should probably work. And then are they both on Attack Closest? They are. So I want you to see, this is very budget gear. But this is the kind, and this is very early in the game we're going to be able to do this. Did we lose? We might have lost our... Okay, we lost our hag. You can give her armor and she'll be fine. Or if we were able to script Iron Warriors, which we normally would if we were Alt 4, we'd be fine. But let me introduce you to my little friend. He is 92 HP. So it's like a tart, basically. But he didn't cost anything like a tart would cost. And I don't have Iron Warriors yet, because when I have Iron Warriors, we'll get him up to 30 protection. He's 24 protection. This guy, who has Iron Skin cast on him, is 32. And yeah, they regenerate. They've got 20% regen, because I also took it in my Bless, which we're probably going to do in the game. Yeah, they regenerate a casual 19 per turn. This is a more fun way to do a national overview, isn't it? Rather than just sitting there and talking about the troops. I actually can show you. Now you see them regenerating 19, but they're just barely getting chip damage, right? This guy is very hard to kill, and this is pretty high MR. If we're going against astral stuff, because he's undead, I don't have to worry about fatigue. We can drop a lead shield on him, and we can do an amulet of anti-magic. Like, we'd have to make it with our god, but we could do it and ditch the bracer or ditch the amulet of giants. Also, because we're 0 encumbrance, we potentially, if we wanted to, could do Boots of the Behemoth, where we trample people. I don't think we really want to. I think we'd better to just sit here and smack them. The Coral Sword's not really needed, but it is more HP. And more HP regen. It doesn't, as far as I can tell, stack like multiplicatively with enlarge, so there's no like ultra synergy with doing it. It's just an okay weapon. But yeah, look at that. They just, I mean, this is just a pile of garbage. We'd have to, the real stress test would be against other things, but, you know, like people send a thug with this sort of sharpness. Oh no, whatever shall I do? You just don't give a shit because you regenerate 19 a turn, you know? And you can make them pretty killy. Like at Construction 4, which, aside from Amulet of Giants, this is all Construction 2 gear. At Construction 4, we get Frostbrands. We can go ahead and throw them in, increase our killiness factor a little bit. And yeah, these guys are stealthy. They can pop in and up wherever, right? So I can do switcheroos with armies. I can put like 4 of these guys and also have Foul Vapor set up, which is probably the go-to if you're dealing with Astral spam. I think Astral is one of the things, if you can, you want to kill them very, very early. Like there's an Astral Nation near you, just bum rush the shit out of them. Anyway, we're getting deep into the strategy, but I wanted you to see, like, we looked at the Panic Apostate and we're like, oh, they're kind of not a great chassis, 27 HP. But behold, 92 HP, 20% regen, 19. It almost is like thinking back to this original Panic Apostate, right, that he came from, 27 HP. We regen almost that much a turn, and we're 90 HP. Right, this is not a huge gym investment to get there. Like, we look at the total real gym investment on one of these guys. It was 15 gems for Twiceborn, and then 5, 10, 15, another 15 of gear. So 30 gems total. Well, the Amulet of Giants will count. So 35 gems total, right? For this monster that can crush armies. I do think they work better in pairs, because their magic paths are okay, but they're a little limited. So anyway, that is the Panic Apostate. Next unit, the Triad Hag. So also recruitable anywhere. It's only 2 commander points. RP is 13 compared to the Panic Apostate, who is 17. So going to feel the hit from Drain Scales a little bit more. Nature 2 is nice, and Holy 2 is nice, because Holy 2 is going to give you access to regrowth, which is pretty good, especially if you get it on, like on your elephants, etc. And then if you give her like a Crystal Matrix, I think one of the things, I was talking with Sakane about it a little bit, because he's played them and kind of was giving me some advice, but having Earth Astral Crosspath is super important, because getting the high level holy spells, you really are going to need communion matrices, like matrices for communions. Ideally, you find like shamans or something to be your communion slaves, and then you only have to make a matrix for her, and then she can do all the high level holy spells, because you get like an area of effect, but MR easily negates mass regen spell, which is pretty good. But yeah, anyway, pretty solid. she also is going to be your best, most reliable access to the nature water cross path, and then nature earth. Nature earth with a gem, by the way, you can get her up with Gaia's blessing to nature 3. So the earth randoms actually can be nature 3 too. And then death randoms, they can just do skelly spam and stuff. I think of these more as like fluffers, is how I think of them. And then they're also decent priests. But a lot of they can by priests I meant like preaching outside of combat, which is going to be important for our build. Aside from that, though, the main job is fluffing, both from the holy with all the Asphodel unique undead spells, and then nature. And then if you're lucky enough to get the water cross path, you can do the moss body stuff and quickness. And the earth, you can do the same stuff we had that Panic Apostate doing, with either putting earth boots on them or spinning an earth gem to do some earth power, and then casting your stuff. So, there's the Triad Hag. Next, we get the Black Dryad. Now, these also are 2 recruitment points, very low on research. So these guys are going to suck if you take Drain 3, which we probably are. And there's an argument against taking Drain and taking Magic, because you get better free spawn from your Dominion. But remember, we're doing low Dominion score. Which reminds me, we haven't really finished talking about the free spawn. These guys are notable for being 70 undead leadership. And you're going to have a lot of garbage you need to run around. And if you're not bringing enough Panic Apostates, you may not want to bring Triad Hags. These guys are way cheaper than Triad Hags, but they still give you the same amount of leadership for undead. So if your job is just like budget raiding, these guys are probably your thing, for budget raiding with piles of undead garbage. I don't think we're actually, with this nation, going to be doing that a ton. Like, it's hard to say. I mean, as the game goes later, maybe we will. But, yeah. There's a good chance we won't. There's a good chance we won't. Because we're not maxing out Dominion, we're not going to have a ton of undead. Anyway. Not too much to say about it. Death 1 is pretty shitty. Nature 1 is okay. You can spam Swarm and Protection and do Bark Skin. But pretty garbage pass. Importantly, your Dryads cannot seduce. Their intoxication with death apparently has made them less seductive. And then we get the Centaur-eyed Hierophantide, however you say it. What's important about these guys is you can recruit them in any forest without having a fort built. I don't have one here, but because I already have a fort. But I'm pretty sure you can't get the Dryads unless you have a fort. But you can get these guys. They kind of suck. They're either going to be death or nature. And then they either have a random for water or earth. And the random is like a very small chance, so I wouldn't even count on that. Basically, you're paying 120 gold for like one of the worst single paths in the game. Like, nature's okay as a single path, but like not worth 120 gold. What are these guys notable for? What are their uses in the nation? Well, they're stealthy. They've got 40 leadership. So that's a good thing. Yeah. These guys also have 40 leadership. And they're about the same price. So I would probably be inclined to maybe use them more. I mean, these do have more HP. The death randoms are going to have decent undead leadership too. They do have +1 inspiration. I think the main use of these guys is leading stealthy raiders like Centaur around. But they're not great at that. They don't have buffs they can cast on them or anything. They give them a morale bonus, and they're relatively cheaper than Dryads. You can kind of also do that, by the way, with the Black Harpy. They are 10 leadership. So 10 Centaur will kill a lot of PD. And if you keep them at the back, they'll probably be able to lead your centaurs around. They are vulnerable, though, obviously. So, anyway, something to be a little careful for. Yeah, that is the commander lineup. We also have the Minotaur Lord, who's 60 leadership, has recuperation Berserk 5, which is a pretty good tag, and he tramples. So potentially you could look at kitting him up, trying to thug him out, do that Amulet of Giant shenanigans with him. I'm pretty meh on these guys. I mean, yeah, I think you have better things to waste gems on than trying to thug these guys out. But you never know. Maybe somebody figures out a way to do it well. Okay, for the troops. We've got Harpies who are... They kind of suck, but they can interrupt like scripts and things like that and interrupt formations. We've all... I can't remember if they siege well. They siege okay. 1.3. It's actually not bad per gold. But they're going to have high attrition. You also... Okay, so then for the Seders, we have the Seder Sneaks. They cause unrest, but they're undisciplined. But they're cheap. And they're okay bang for your buck in terms of siege chaff. These guys, the Seder, also 9 gold, but does not cause unrest and has a javelin. Probably a better investment. And then finally the Centaur Warrior, which is significantly more expensive, while not being more killy. He basically just paying that to get a shield, and then slightly better stats. Like 1 better attack. Which, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like 1 doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter much. Not like 50% more gold much. So, and he loses stealthy. So, not a fan. We have the Minotaur, which they're size 3 tramplers that also hit really hard. And they go berserk. They're okay. I think if you use these guys, they tend to die in my experience. They don't work very well in my experience for expansion. They don't kill things. You know, size 3 tramplers don't kill things super duper fast. They get absolutely wrecked by things like heavy cav, which you would think they would do okay against because they would, just hit them with their double axe. Doesn't end up playing out that way. They have pretty bad attack and defense scores, which I think is part of the reason they end up being more soft than you think they would be. They kind of get wrecked. Once they go berserk, their attack skill gets a good bit better with the plus 4. If you pay 25% more, you get the Minotaur Warrior, which gets an additional attack skill. So instead of starting at 9, it starts at 10. And he hits a tiny bit harder, and he has a tiny bit more HP. So it's 50 gold. Not a fan. Not a fan. I can think of... I think it's valuable having these guys in your arsenal, because I can definitely think of a situation where you would want them. And I can definitely think with buffs on them, they could be good. But I'm also kind of meh on them. Anyway, that's where I stand now. I may change my mind. I reserve the right. Next up, we have the Centaur Archers. We have this lady who's a short bow, which you basically would never ever want to get, because it's 25 gold for a short bow with no armor. And then you have this guy who you probably don't want to get, but you'll get them more than you'd get the other one, who's 25 gold for a longbow, which also is not great. What's nice about them is they're stealthy. So having 50 Centaur longbow archers show up when somebody didn't expect it could be cool. I don't think I would usually want that. I would probably want like a lot of javelins and then have more chaff running in, but maybe there's a scenario where this is good. I think you mostly ignore these. And then we have, let's go back to our capital here. Then we have the Centaur Warriors. We have the male and female version, as always. We have the female version here, which has slightly better defense, but does not go berserk. So, yeah, they're going to be pretty hard to hit. I'm not actually sure which one's better for expanding. I actually should probably test it. I typically use the male because berserk is a really nice tag. So they're going to go berserk, they're going to hit harder, but their defense is lower. And when they go berserk, their defense gets even lower. So I'm not sure. They're also a tiny bit more expensive. I feel like versus most player things, like harder to kill units, this is generally going to be the better choice. So when you expand with these guys, you're probably going to want to use them. What I found is you can do two things. You can, one, have some chaff like Seders, which are probably going to die, but they're going to distract the enemy for a little bit. Meanwhile, you have your centaurs on flanking duty. Problem with that is they tend to kill the commander, and then if you have like 5 guys that are flanking, they're going to kill the commander, and then they're going to have to fight through the retreating dudes, which you would think wouldn't be very hard, but a lot of times I find it's kind of high attrition for the centaur, because like 20 guys retreating will do a lot of work on these guys. They're kind of killy, kind of, but they're not very tough. I mean, there are no pushovers, but I don't know. I found it was reasonably high attrition. The other option is you just have them run at the front line. If you do that, you're probably going to need more. At which point, though, you might say, well, if I need more, I could just have more on attack rear, and then it would be better. And it's like, kind of, but then you also need to have Seder chaff. If you just have like 10, you can usually just run them at the front line. What you will find, though, is an expansion, and then versus other players, too. Things with a lot of armor, these guys suck against. So, like, heavy cav will wreck these guys. They're okay against barbarians if you have enough of them, but you need, like, enough. And because they don't take hits that well. I mean, you want them to get a little beat up, but, like, barbarians will wreck them, too, if you don't bring enough. So, they do have a shield, so they're kind of better against archers than some of your other garbage, but you know, they're solid. Versus players, you're probably going to want to use them to flank. But yeah, they're all right. They are not bad. They're stealthy, which is very important. And then finally, we have the Black Centaur. Black Centaur also, they're basically like the Centaur Warrior. They might have slightly better stats. I think they have a little better defense. But they're importantly blessed, or sacred, so you can bless them. And depending on the bless you take, it could be really good. Yeah. Made it through all the units. All the summons. Well, we have a few. We get the Carrion Centaur. If you do twice born on your Centaur, they'll come back as this. Probably waste the gems, though. We have the Carrion Lady, who is a very fine lady indeed. I can't remember what paths they get. We'd have to check the mod inspector. I don't know if they can have a death random too or something, or if it's just always nature 1, holy 2. But they can reanimate. And then finally we have the Carrion Lord, who is holy 3. So if you noticed holy 1, holy 2, holy 3, these guys are holy 3. They can also reanimate, and we've talked about the chassis a lot already. So if we compare the reanimation rates, these guys are these guys are 2 undead a turn. These guys are 3, and these guys are 4. And that is going to segue into our portion of this where we talk about reanimation with Asphodel. What kinds you get, etc., etc. So, if you have no magic, you're going to get mostly hot garbage like this, right? So, you can see we get some mannequins. We'll talk a bit about like the attacks these guys get because it's pretty important. Anyway, you get mannequins. These are different. These are satyr mannequins. There's all these different types. These are special because they're sacred. So basically, you can get these beasts. You can get the satyr mannequins. You can get the carrion beasts, and then you get the normal mannequins. Now, one thing that is common to all of them is they have the Sleep Vines attack, which has 3 attacks built in. Each of them does 33 fatigue damage, but each of them also is MR negates. Low attack, reasonably high length. So, yeah, this thing though will cause them with the 3 attacks to get absolutely butchered by Fire Shield. I've never seen anything die like these guys die to Fire Shield, trying to smack stuff with Sleep Vines. I think what normally happens is they normally die before they can even swipe their claw. So like even if something is fatigued out, it doesn't even matter because they literally will combust on Fire Shield before they can even sling their claw. I mean, it's like a bomb going off with when one thug shows up with fire shield fighting these guys. But they can pretty quickly fatigue out a front line or fatigue out thugs that aren't prepared for them. I have found they're actually not. People have said, like, do not. Yeah, I was fighting Sakane. Sakane was playing Asphodel, and I was playing Naba, and Naba kind of wants to thug. They certainly can thug, and I was asking around, like, how should I thug to fight mannequins? And people were like, "Oh, why would you do that? You're literally bringing the thing that mannequins are good against." Yeah, okay, it's horseshit, by the way. Like, the boss thugs murder mannequins by the hundreds. I mean, they put up fire shield, like iron skin, and then maybe buff up their MR a little bit. It's like a bomb going off. I mean, these guys surround them and immediately pop. I mean, one very budget thug could easily kill like 200 mannequins without breaking a sweat. Yeah. Which I do not like these. Like, these Chaffee units I don't like. They're garbage. I mean, the Sleep Vines is okay, but like versus Undead, which is a pretty common thing, these do literally nothing. So like, if there's an Airmore in your game, which I think there will be in ours, then basically they're zero protection, one shitty attack, dudes. They're just bad. They're really bad. They also don't have cold resistance like most Undead do. And they also have the Magic Being tag, which is not a good tag. That is a bad tag. So that means you get especially butchered by certain types of spells and items. They have Spirit Sight. That's kind of okay. They're mindless, which is kind of okay. They're basically hot garbage. The Sacreds are a little special. They have a Vine Whip, which actually is good versus thugs because it can keep somebody entangled. They have a Vine Bow, which is kind of cool. It's a magic bow. And then they have a Sacred Tag combined with Sleep Vines. It means you could do something funny with like Weapon Blesses, and I think it would apply 3 times to this. So anyway, there's funny little weird things you might be able to do. Yeah. Otherwise, not super duper special. I mean, they're kind of rare. You don't get a ton. I'm not totally sure how I would want to use them. I think the way I think of them more is like bodyguards right now. Like, have some Thug Bless that can go on these guys that make some pretty durable bodyguards. Or maybe anti-thug tech. I don't know. Not a huge fan. But, they're bodies. And quantity is its own quality. Over here in our capital, we have been summoning them with Reanimate. And one thing you'll notice, so in this particular game, I've got a god I may use in my actual game, but you can see we've taken Growth and Drain. And one thing you will notice is we have better Sacreds. I mean, we have better summons here. And that is because we are less affected, or I think unaffected, by scales. The units you get from reanimation, like the skill, are not affected by scales. It is tied instead just, to the unit that's reanimating. Like, it doesn't matter anything, dominion, strength, scales, nothing matters, right? You just are going to get a mix of your chaff, which is nice because if you go Drain, you're not going to get any of this good stuff otherwise. And if we're going Dominion Strength 1, we're not really going to be relying hardly at all on the free spawn we get from provinces. And there's an exception to that, but we'll come to it. So the best unit we get is this, the Carrion Beast. And it's an elephant. It tramples. Oh, wait, no. Does it trample? Oh, yeah, it does. Okay, I thought it did. Yeah, it tramples. It has Fear 5. And if it hits somebody that's size 6, it's got 2 Sleep Vine attacks and a Tusk. But yeah, Fear on a 95 HP Trampler is pretty good. And then with the national spell we have that gives everybody regen, these become extra good. Because they will be regening for, like 10 HP a turn. which is not bad. It is not bad at all. And then spreading fear everywhere. These guys are sick. They're one of the few things that's like genuinely redeeming about the free spawn of Asphodel. And then next up we have the Minotaur Mannequin. These guys actually dish out a fair amount of damage in melee, so it makes them not garbage. These are actually good. You can see we don't get a ton of them, like in terms of ratios. And then next up we have the Carrion Beast, which has a high damage claw attack and a lot of HP. So with regeneration on it, going to be hard to kill, relatively. And yeah, good. A good, like if these were the troops we got, or if we got a higher mix of these, Asphodel wouldn't be so bad. But mostly we get these guys who mostly suck, and these guys who mostly suck, and then these guys who suck really hard. Yeah. But they are free spawn, and free spawn are good in general. I mean, the bar for free spawn is not terribly high. And getting some really good dudes. Like, these are kind of the value of, like, a behemoth. I think behemoths might be a little better, but I don't know. These are really good. So, as we're thinking about this, how are we going to manage free spawn for this nation? Well, I've already told you that we're not going to be expecting to get much from our Dominion. Like, here you can see we've got one candle. We don't get much. We just don't get much at all. Here you can see we get a little bit more, and it's a little bit better because it's a fort with a temple. But you can see still no elephants, right? So the elephants are really only going to come if you get Magic Dominion. And we're not doing that. So our plan for playing this nation is we're going to rely on what I see as the strengths of the nation, which are Panic Apostates, their Twiceborn form, and yeah, that's basically the strength. And we're going to be using the troops. Like, the troops are not complete garbage, right? So we're going to be getting a lot of Centaur Warriors. Because we're Dom Strength 1, our population... Why is our population so freaking low? What turn is it? 40? Okay. So turn 40, it's down at 1,700. That's actually lower than I thought it would be. That makes me think that it might be 2% pop kill. That's actually kind of not good. I wonder if we had a bad event. We got hit by a meteorite. That reduced the population some, but not a tremendous amount. I think that reduced it like 2,000. I guess it wouldn't be that bad then. Anyway. Yeah, the strengths we're going to be playing to are the Panic Apostates, which are good. A Research Rush to get big, and then we're going to keep fighting. We're going to just be really aggressive. We're going to try to control Mother Oak and ideally Well of Misery. And yeah, we're not going to be a nation of a ton of tricks. The other thing that I think is important, we'll talk about it a little bit. Oh, I didn't finish talking about free spawn. So there's a bit of another trade-off or conflict. And that is what to do with forest forts. Because, like, even if we go one Dom Strength, forest forts, you kind of do want to get your Dominion in. Here you can see I had somebody here preaching to get my Dominion strength up, and that has given me a fair amount of free spawn compared to this fort, where I think I had them at about the same time. So 143, and then this one was just been one candle. We've got 50. So about 3 times as many free spawn from this. The problem doing it, though, is the more you do it, you make it so you can't recruit units here anymore. And if you recall, we're not going to be stamping out forts everywhere because they're expensive and they give no commander points. So, yeah. Like, what do we do? If we can preach up the Dominion in our fort to be much higher than our Dom Strength, so we can get up to 5 candles, even though if we had a Holy 3, we could get up to, not an Undead Holy 3, a non-Undead Holy 3, because Undead Holy 3s can't preach. But if we had a Holy 3, we could even get up to 7 candles, which would be pretty high. We'd get a lot of free spawn. It would be worth doing it just in our forests while keeping everything else relatively nice and healthy. The problem doing that, though, is we then depopulate our forests, which we wouldn't care about, except that they're, for a large portion of the game, probably going to be the location of our forts, which we're going to need them to recruit our units, because we're going to be needing units. Yeah. So that's basically that. I think the way... Let's talk a little bit about research, because we've got... What are the issues? Well, the issues are battlefield wipes and things like fire elementals, which are going to crush our free spawn. And for that, we really either have to go enchantment 8 to get things like Fire Fend, right, which will protect us from Firestorm. It would also help a lot with fire elementals. Or we have to go for Alt 8, which gives us Warriors of Niflheim, which also gives us fire resistance. This also, Alteration and Enchantment, are the two schools that have just a tremendous amount of draw for us. Enchantment, we're almost definitely going to want to go at least as far to get Foul Vapors. So yeah. That's something we're definitely going to want. It's also going to unlock Court of Skeletons, which of course we can do a lot of. And then Enchantment 6 we're almost definitely going to want, because it's going to take us to Rigor Mortis. And Fatigue plays with Undead are obviously super good. We can also do Grip of Winter, though this will also affect our units. But if we're doing a Fatigue play and we're doing two things to cause Fatigue, like Grip of Winter and Rigor Mortis, and they are only... Like, we're getting affected by one of them, Grip of Winter, but they're getting affected by two. It's still better for us to drop two, like, because it's going to fatigue them out faster, and our guys will be fine. It will fatigue them out slowly, but we'll be fine. So anyway, Enchantment 6, super duper appealing. Quagmire, also nice. Anyway, bunch of nice stuff in here. Nature... We get relief we could potentially do if we've got Skelly Spammers going. It is not a bad use of a nature gem. And I think that is about it. I mean, Serpent's Blessing, we're not really going to do. So anyway, Enchantment, very high appeal. If we go all the way down to Enchantment 8, we also get Lichcraft, which is kind of nice. But we're probably going to be able to spend a lot of our death gems just doing Twiceborn, and that might be... There's things I can think we would want to Lich for, like if we're going to do an Air Empowerment, it would be good to do it on a Lich, but otherwise I think we'll probably stick with Twiceborn. Alteration, though, is going to have very appealing things also. Skeletal Legion, not great except on Centaurs, in which case it's okay, because you can get disease from Skeletal Legion, but we have recuperation on our guys, so it's not a big deal. Darkness, obviously, is huge. Bone Grinding is something we can do, especially if we have Matrices. And we can also, because we have recuperation, get rid of the afflictions that come from bone grinding, which is kind of nice. We can bone grinding our armies and not really worry about it. Disintegrate's super nice. Very good counter-thug measure. And Soul Vortex, super good. This is going to dramatically increase the effectiveness of our dudes against troops, as will Invulnerability. Invulnerability, very good. Going to be less good, I think, than Iron Skin, depending on who we're fighting. But anyway, everybody can do it. I don't have to wait for like a special random, which is nice. Drain Life, also very good anti-thug tech. This one will require a Skull Staff on a death random to cast, but definitely something we can have in each of our armies, so we don't get thugged or super combatanted too hard. And yeah, so anyway, there's a large reason to go it for death. For nature, we get a lot of good stuff here. We get Enlarge, which is really good. That was one of the things we were using a lot. We get Moss Body, which is really good. We get Wooden Warriors, which is going to be kind of one of maybe our first power spikes if we were fighting a non-fire nation. Mother Oak, which is something we're desperately going to try to control. And then we get Transformation, which actually can be pretty good. I don't think we're going to do it much, because I think we're going to use Death Gems for Twiceborning more than like this for Transformation. But potentially we could try to transform, get like a giant shape to get like a, a tart essentially. Which would be especially good on us because, um, you know, we can do the undead regeneration stuff. But I don't think we'll be doing that. Anyway, transformation, which is okay, and then mass protection, which obviously is going to be really good if we're not worried about fire resistance. And then once we get to 8, we're going to have the Warriors of Niflheim, which when we come back and we have mass protection and that, it's going to be pretty good because we'll have kind of covered our fire weakness. Creeping Doom, of course, is good. Curse of Frog Prince is good too. A lot of good things here for dealing with thugs. The other thing, running up this, if we have air on our Pretender, it's going to open up Fog Warriors for very important battles. Yeah. And then I think we've covered most of the things. Also, potentially, we got Marble Warriors at 7. Oh, the other thing, and this plays into our whole big strategy, is Wizard Tower. We have a major problem that we can't make good forts, and we're trying to kind of play scales. So it's very possible we have a lot of money and we're going to struggle to spend it. And if that is the case, Wizard's Tower will help us out a lot. Because basically it's going to allow us... I keep hitting the mic, sorry. It's going to allow us to drop down 2 commander point forts. Or, wait, no, 1 commander point forts. But that have a bajillion wall strength. So... Anyway, that's going to be really nice for us to drop on thrones. I think there's basically a huge incentive to go Alt 8 first, for the first of our 8s. But that doesn't mean we beeline to it. I think we're still going to want Enchantment 6, maybe before we get Alt 5 even. We're going to want Alt 5 reasonably soon too, to get to fight for Mother Oak. We're going to want Construction 2 at a minimum, maybe 4, to start kitting out our thugs. And Conjuration we also kind of want to run up too to get to fight for Well of Misery, and then we can, get Fairy Queens and stuff to diversify our magic pool. So there's a lot of stuff we kind of want to get, and also like Thaumaturgy, it would be nice, but I think a little unpracticable to get Charm. I think that's a little too out of the way for us. There's just not enough here. Yeah, there's just not enough here. So, anyway, stepping back, what are we left with? We are left with, I think, a nation which still on paper doesn't look terribly strong. But they are a nation which, oddly enough, can scale reasonably well. We have a lot of ways to get rid of upkeep through basically twice-borning or transforming. We have Recruit Anywhere. They're essentially cap-only mages, right, that are Recruit Anywhere. They're really good. So anyway, we have those guys. We have the ability to make decent units out of all our forts. And we, importantly, have access to these units who can reanimate, our carry-on dudes. And especially if we can control Mother Oak, we can actually get kind of a lot of them. And drive most of our free spawn production through them, and then also keep our Dominion high. And having the ability to either use, hopefully, fluffed and buffed centaurs, right, with wooden warriors, or maybe mass regen once we get there, or maybe minotaurs, because minotaurs, I think, as we get more buffs on them, actually become better. Because, once their protection is kind of fixed and then they have mass regen on them, I think the Berserk gets a little bit more appealing. And then also, potentially, even like in the very late game, we could even get Growing Fury and stuff to set them off at the beginning of combat. I don't think we'd do that for our mages, but you never know. Anyway, we've got decent enough troops. We've got free spawn, which, is pretty useful. We've got we've got very good thug and caster options from these guys. If we can control, I think this is my logic. This is kind of like closing thoughts. If we can be aggressive enough and site search enough, we will be a gym income leader. Particularly in the paths we care about, nature, death, and earth. If we can leverage that into controlling key globals, I think we are set up to potentially win a game against good players. That's where I'll leave it. Do I think they're like the strongest nation after trying to fall in love with them? No, I don't. Do I think that they have strengths which you can leverage to get an overwhelming advantage and win a game? I do. And we're going to try to do it. I have no idea if we will be successful or not. But thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.